Oh, wait, we're not online.
We have to move
Oh, it is moving. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Any public comment? Any comment from online? Okay, item number 4. So, there's the approval of the minutes from the March 30th meeting. They are in your packet if you haven't had a chance to look at them. So I didn't need to print all this out. You did it for us. What's me? I can't remember the trail, so it's a long time ago. Any, I don't, not hearing any, comments.
I move that we accept minutes of
I'll second that.
Thursday, March 20th, 2025 as submitted.
Seconded. We'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right. Thank you all. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the discussion and motion for the bylaw change. You want to update us on that?
Sure. I mean, we met on, I think it was April 7th with the policy committee. And Carol, as chair of the committee, had provided some language that largely was what we adopted as the recommendation to the full board, as required by the bylaws and all that. I sent out that language to the full board as notice. And then, and if I remember, it had to be 28 days before the meeting where it was voted on. So we got it out by the 15th, and it had to be out by the 17th or something.
Sorry, I'm talking to the people.
Is there somebody on there?
No.
I think we go.
Oh, sorry. And oh no. And so, but I also posted it online in the building and in town hall, so it was publicly noticed for everybody, because we're in a public comment period. It's self-selective. And then my understanding is that you all can now vote on it for the first time this evening, should you choose to, and then no sooner than 30 days from now, vote a second time. And for me, I've heard no comment about it at all. I did notify Scott Pickup specifically and mentioned to at least Rick Cowan and maybe other board members casually, select board members casually, that we were in the process. You folks were in the process of doing. So that's my update on that.
Great, thank you. So if you are interested, you did get a copy of it when it was released for public comment, but the proposed language is on the articles page under proposed.
Right, so the Article 1 was the one that we originally talked about. That's the main one that decreases the board down to 7 members. But then by changing that, then we also found that we needed to change Article 3 as to what was a quorum, and then a little bit on the language of how to do changes, again, to adjust those numbers to our new number.
further discussion? We'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we have passed the first vote on amending the bylaws, and we will make sure that it is on the next agenda for a revote. All right, so update number 6 on Department of Libraries.
So, I talked a little bit about this last time, but, there's been a lot of, turmoil. There's been, less turmoil, thankfully. So, I had said, I think last time, that I've said to a lot of people actually, how much I appreciate the kind of clarity and, careful communication from the Department of Libraries. They've been very far from alarmist or overreacting or hyperbolic, which is unusual these days, and so much appreciated. And so what's happened over the since about 2 months ago, when the administration released an executive order and then sought to sort of dismantle IMLS, which is the major library funder of federal money, about $275 million a year, of which about 1.2 million comes to Vermont through the Grants to States program. So that was the initial thing, and as I think I mentioned, maybe I didn't at the last meeting. I think it had just happened, maybe that they basically put everybody on administrative leave, and it looked like everything was just basically sunk. But of course, the American Library Association is one of the best advocacy groups there is. And they, by the way, are largely responsible for positive changes to the Patriot Act when that came out in 2001, 2, presumably, especially around library records, because those were directly impacted. So during the Patriot Act, there was language in that allowed the FBI to search library records to see what people were reading without a warrant. And that both changed in the law and also changed in the way libraries do business, because they no longer keep that information so that the FBI doesn't know what people are looking at, which is very much in the realm of privacy, which is a big ALA kind of thing. So anyway, they not immediately, but relatively quickly, within a week, sued. And also 21 states, through their attorney generals, including Vermont, sued as well. And part of it was around the funding, and part of it was around the dismantling. So pretty quickly, as that was playing out, it turned out that all of the money that the state expected for the year we're in right now, meaning through September 30th, so FY25 for the federal budget, was here, and nobody expected it to go away. And then a couple of weeks after that, the state librarian sent out another brief notice, but concise, informative, that said that they expected to get at least half of the funding for the next fiscal year, so meaning on October 1st. And not long after that, that she said that they expected to get all the funding for FY26. And so I've been saying to people, let's just wait and see what happens, because I have a lot of confidence in the American Library Association and libraries in general. They're very good self-advocating groups. And so also, there's clearly a recognition that congressionally appropriated funds are, really the business of Congress as much as anything else. And so that's why the funding seems to be releasing. And there are people working at IMLS again, interestingly, and the dismantling of it has been frozen. The executive order has been suspended as it's being reviewed. And so
lawsuits pending? Like, is that what's driving?
Yeah, so there's lawsuits that were done by the attorney generals at the 21 states, and then the ALA has really managed to give some breathing room to figure out what's going on. So that's all good news. And then Trump fired the librarian of Congress not that long ago, and like last week. From Baltimore, right? Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, she's been there since like 16 or something like that. So, like a lot of things that are happening right now, it seems like a good thing is to try to figure out what somebody can do and what they can't do. And so right now with that, the administration can actually dismiss the Librarian of Congress.
So is the Library of Congress not part of Congress? but
Yeah, isn't
part
that
of the
strange?
Executive branch?
So it's a political appointee by the executive branch. It rarely plays a particularly political role, but it does. And that's what I was saying to people, right? I was like, well, wait a second, it's the Librarian of Congress, but it's a congressionally approved position. And so, it sounds like Congress and especially the people working at the library aren't recognizing interim appointees. And the other thing is that, and legally, it sounds like not surprising to me. They're sort of like, no, thank you. And also, the administration is not allowed to appoint subdirector level positions, which is what they were trying to do. They're trying to dismantle the structure of the copyright office. So, um, so that's been frozen too. And so, so we'll wait and see. But it seems like the senior leadership of the Library of Congress wasn't surprised by this move and were ready to figure out legally or knew exactly what they were able to work with. And so, and it sounds like this is one that there's bipartisan support in Congress, like this is our librarian of our, library. And so maybe we want to have a little more to do with this. So it sounds like, we'll see where that'll go, Jim. But again, I'm not really that surprised because librarians are very, well, they do a lot of research. They know what they can do. They're part of the educated enemy.
Of the educated
It's
enemy.
not often the way we try to describe ourselves, but it's not far from the truth either. And obviously, the libraries are interested in, freedom of information and stuff, and these things are
All the things that
clearly.
they're not.
Yes, it's a little bit of, I think there's a little bit of concern here, right? And so trying to get it right. So anyway, the good news is the money seems to be relatively intact or entirely intact for the time being, which is great because if nothing else, it gives us more time to see where this all goes and to think about how we want to make sure, things are working how we want them.
You have any information as to the funding that would be, that might be present in the current budget bill for the coming budgets?
No, but the budget, and I don't know why it works this way, but the IMLS funding is done multiple years in advance, apparently. And so that's why it's less uncertain and they can move more quickly to solidify it. And so when I saw that a couple of weeks ago, it struck me like, why is this out of sync, with the rest of it? But I think it probably has to do with the fact that most of the money that's moving through museums and libraries through that kind of structure is multi-year kind of money. And so the only way to plan for it is to plan for it in, longer than annual cycles.
So for how long would you say the funding is secured?
2 years, it sounds like.
26?
Yes. That's what it sounds like right now. But I have a lot of confidence in that, not 100%, but the state has been so careful in how they're communicating and not getting, ahead of their skis, as one might say. And so it feels like they know what they're talking about. And they're going out of their way and they're providing regular updates, which is great, meaning like every 2 weeks, which is about the right amount of time when, every 10 minutes, it feels like something, crazy is happening. So anyway, so it's a very promising, given all the bludgeoning that's happening, it's pretty promising.
Any comments or questions, Ian, on the update?
Thanks for the update.
Yeah, no, happy to, it's a nice update.
All right, so we'll move on then to the next one. Ian, do you want to give the update for the FY 25 budget?
Yeah, definitely. So I thought this was gridded, which I thought I did before I PDF'd it, but maybe that went away. But it's pretty clear what's going on. And I just wanted to, make a couple points. We're clearly going to come in quite a bit over budget because we have at least, I'd say $10,000+ of investment income still to be realized this year. And also, and we got a $25,000 bequest, which obviously made a big difference. So that's, recognized here as well. But then in the about 2/3 of the way down, the $10,000 collectively, the 2,000, the 8,000 for friends related, well, now friends related income. When this budget was put together, it had to get moved to the friends. The Friends, through their appeal and just their appeal, raised more than $10,000, which, cumulatively is so more than this. And, they had in our last meeting, or maybe the last two meetings, we talked about them, keeping some reserves. They have about $25,000 right now, which is, I think, the most money they've ever had. And so, they talked about keeping some reserves in anticipation of like major, things happening. And now maybe that's not so critical. And so they're about to have the plant sale at the end of the month, which will bring in some more money. And then the Guilford Welcome Center is over the summer. That's like their largest fundraiser. And so, they're just piling up cash, which is great. So even though we're not seeing that money directly in revenue to the library, we'll see quite a bit of it this year because they're paid for some things that you'll see as I walk through this thing. But it's modeled differently now since they are raising the money, and then we used to also do something that we've stopped, which is have them pay for some things directly, and it just wasn't a good practice. It works better if we pay for things so they're all recognized through our records and through our documentation, and then they reimburse us for that stuff. So we bought some snowshoes just after it stopped snowing, and so they're brand new for next year. And it was about $800, and they are paying for them. We haven't gotten the check yet, but they, and so they pay for Biblio Plus still, which is $1,800, and that's an expense on our books that we haven't gotten from them yet. And so
the expenses will be on our books, but the income will not.
it will, because they'll write us a check,
Oh,
and then somewhere in here
You'll reconcile it.
it'll appear as revenue, which is another reason that we're already over for the year, and we'll end up even farther over for the year for revenue. Ideally, I'd like to I'm hoping that we'll end up under. So some of that plays out here in kind of funny ways, like, well, let me start in the salary stuff real quick. I don't want to dwell on this too much and obviously ask any questions. This is somewhere in the neighborhood of 74% of our budget. We're trying to bring that down. There's been changes in the staffing model this year that we anticipated in next year's budget, but we're already seeing now. And so we are actually going to be, fair amount under, especially because our benefits costs are going to be significantly lower this year. And so that's great news, I think. There's something very wrong with our dues and workshops line, and so just ignore that. I have no idea. I don't know what that is. Something got miscategorized for sure. So yeah, exactly. So I mean, things are obviously, some of this is like Sam buys quite a bit of the youth books right now, and we're getting boxes in like regularly. So that'll probably end up at 100% for youth books. It's half now, but it's just the way the year kind of cycles through. Youth audio is at zero. She just bought like $800 worth of, I forget what they're called, but there's these very cool audio books that read to you, and they're for like early learning and stuff like that. They're called box books, and they're a little pricier, but people love them. We're over on programs, but this is a place where the Friends traditionally have written checks directly, and instead they'll write a check. And so we also bumped up both those lines in the next year's budget because we really do want to be spending more money on that stuff. Things are looking, pretty good in general. Fixtures is another place where the Friends are, that stuff that the Friends are covering. It's new panels for the Biblio bike because it's several years, and now the box, which is just particle board,
Oh.
for Vermont rain and in general. So we just got, and is getting put on this week or next week at the latest, just a new box that's going to be $1,200. So that was part of that, and another part has to do with the gardens and stuff. So that's here. But in revenue, we'll see money that'll offset that. Tech equipment, on the other hand, was money we just determined to spend this year because all of our computers were basically collapsing. We were trying to wait until July 1st because we were obligated by October 1st or so to replace basically all the public computers because we have to have Windows 11 running by sometime in October. And none of the computers we had would, and Town Hall has the same problem right now. None of the computers that we had for public computers would possibly have run it. They just were far too old. We couldn't wait. And so we got 5 computers for about $550 each. They're super nice computers. And so that's part of that cost. Most of that cost actually is for that. And then software, unfortunately, is kind of related to that too. But we got, the $25,000 request we weren't expecting. And so a little bit of it went to that. Other things generally looking pretty good. Security is one where we have a $20,000 grant from the state to redo our tech infrastructure. And we redid our entire network infrastructure, including all of the hotspots and everything last summer. We're switched over to digital phones, voice over IP, and we're moving our security also onto that. It is covered by the grant, but this was charged against our regular line rather than our grant line. That's a separate grant line. So that'll just get moved off. And there will be another $1,000 because we have to move another component of the security system onto that too. The good news is we're going to save a ton of money by having eventually nothing on copper lines, which are costing us a lot of money just to have it all, including the elevator. So that's good. And the telephones this is part of what the problem is with the telephones. The costs are just wild. This also is part of that grant allows us to pay over the next 10 years, it's down to 9, for any internet costs, including voice over IP costs that we want to. So if we decide at the end of the year that we want to charge some of the costs back to that grant, we can. But I think it's good to also keep that money in reserve for a while because 5 years, we can use it for anything network related. And if we burn it all through on phone bills, then in 5 years, if we need to upgrade some infrastructure, then we're digging through the couches. And so if we can sit on it for a while, from the state, we have 10 years and it sits in the town's accounts right now. So repairs and maintenance is, it's very expensive to maintain this building. And for next year, we did raise it, I think, to about this much money. So that's that. But we're under on insurance, and I think that's all the cost for the year. So that's good. So I mean, I think we're going to probably come in at or under budget for expenses, well over for revenue. And I think that at the end of the day, the numbers in this budget will look a lot like the budget you guys passed for next year when we were trying to actualize some of the changes, and opportunities presented themselves, especially in the staffing, throughout the year, which has been good.
What's going on with water and sewer?
I don't have a clue. I'm wondering I'll ask Alyssa about that because, she tells us how much to budget for that and why it would be wildly wrong. I have no idea. For some things like workers' comp, it's a little less predictable and can spin a little sideways, but water and sewer is like a town cost that they should. So I'm wondering if we didn't get charged for some other building as well as ours or something like that. Yeah, I will. I know that makes sense. I mean, it seems like none. It's like a trickle that comes out of the fountain. Just
Maybe
fell right
like
down.
siphoning.
Yeah, you think like the Masonic temple next door is like everywhere. I noticed that too. Thanks, Bonnie. Are there any questions about it?
So I have this dream about our library having a subscription to the Candid Foundation grant search database. And I'm wondering and musing if possibly Friends of the Library would be interested in that, considering they've had such successful fundraising lately.
That's an excellent idea.
You know.
I think it would-
cost.
It's pretty hefty.
I think it's like 4, right?
I think so.
In the
I
neighborhood,
haven't looked in like
For
a little bit of a year.
4,000.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been
For
on
1
my
year?
list to possibly, as an alternative, to check with other libraries and possibly even at the state level and see if the state level could get it for all the libraries, but I haven't done much poking around on that. That idea came out of realizing that, like Portland, Oregon, where I used to live, probably has one for their entire system, which serves,
A bigger city.
it serves similar amount of people probably to Vermont.
The whole state.
So if Candid Foundation would be like do that kind of thing with multi-libraries, Vermont itself could be a possibility. But if that's like a 2 or 3 year process and Friends and Library would be willing to cover it now, it'd be great to see, because we have a lot of organizations in town that could really benefit from that. And currently, if you want to use it, you have to either get your own for your organization, or you can go to Brattleboro,
So who in Brattleboro has,
the library. But you can only use it in person. You can't access it through the library online.
Well, I think that's something that, obviously decisions like that are only made by staff, pointing to you, but
I qualify
Yeah.
staff.
yeah, you do. So I think that, it's not a board discussion necessarily, but talk to him.
I will.
Well, and I think we should just get you to the next Friends meeting so that you can talk to them.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
I mean, if the library or the Friends could get a $5,000 grant and spend just one, something more than they're investing, it's worth it. And
Yeah.
everyone else can use it too. And I did try to get something else a couple months ago, but it turned out not to be worth the small amount of money that it was
Mm,
briefly offered for it through TechSoup.
oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Anything more about the budget? Hey, thank you so much, Ian.
Mhm.
It's great to see it as it's coming, down to.
landing.
Yeah. Okay, Sustainable Libraries Program. So I don't know if it's Ian or you.
So I did just did some little bit of into this. The Sustainable Libraries Initiative is, as it says in my little document, it gives you a tested, structured path forward to make your library's commitment to environmental stewardship, economic feasibility, and social equity better. They provide mentor to take you through. They provide resources that you can't look at unless you are already a member. They're not free to the public. And they give you 12 categories to work through. They suggest a committee structure of 4 to 8. I think for a library this size, 3 would probably be plenty. And I would think we want 1 employee on there. in the meantime, also contacted the librarian at the Norman Williams Public Library, which was certified, and her emails are in, all her emails are here in Outlook. I asked her, have your library patrons, in particular townspeople in general, been aware of the changes and what has been their feedback? How have the library's employees responded to the changes? For example, some people think LED lighting has negative effects on their eyes. And 3, what were the costs associated with the improvements listed on your website, especially the HVAC system? She said in her first response, while we were working toward the certification, we shared updates through our monthly newsletter, and occasionally the Vermont Standard. For major changes, we made a point to keep patrons informed about what was happening at their library. As is often the case, some patrons have been more aware than others. For example, those who don't need to recycle batteries may not have noticed that we've been collecting them free of charge for sustainable recycling for 3 years. But everyone certainly noticed when our HVAC system was replaced in 2019, it cost $600,000. But considering we had spent a full year without heat or air conditioning, the upgrade was necessary, but we had to do it anyway. We've had nothing but positive feedback on our purchase of solar panels, actually donated by a generous patron, which are located in a nearby solar array. The same goes for our switch to building-wide LED lighting. That lighting project was considerable expense, $13,000, but rebates were available at the time to help offset the cost. Prior to the upgrade, we had a patchwork of different lighting types throughout the building, some of which worked better than others. This has been one of the improvements most enthusiastically noted by both patrons and staff. When we began the certification journey, we found many of the required action items on the very long checklist were things we were already doing. Going through and checking off this low-hanging fruit made the entire task feel far less daunting. We're also fortunate to have a wonderful local garden club that helps maintain our library gardens. They're more than willing to adapt their practices to meet the requirements of the outdoor spaces section. Other changes like getting an Energy Star rated dishwasher is something we had to replace anyway. Adding new recycling bins or placing plants in individual workspaces were all low cost but impactful improvements. We've received no negative feedback about any of the changes we made, and staff have been supportive throughout the process. I wrote back and I said, I asked if she encountered any resistance that was especially difficult to negotiate, and with their support coming from any quarter that was especially helpful to the initiative. That we didn't encounter any resistance on any front while working toward this initiative. To be honest, we mostly just pushed ahead on our own to complete the tasks. We kept patrons and the public informed when major projects were underway, like the HVAC or window restoration, but otherwise we quietly went about getting things done. Once the entire certification was completed, we took more time to share with the public why and how we've gone through the process. Perhaps being an incorporated library, we have more leeway when it comes to something like this. I'm not entirely sure, but good luck moving forward. Yeah, so that's the information flow was all positive. They had different expenses than we would have. And the one thing I noted in the minutes, we agreed to spend the $50 a year, but there's a $300 charge to get the certification before the 50s after that. And
Now, what we have to do, how is our heating system? Also,
I'm sorry,
how is our heating system here?
I don't know, I haven't been to the system.
So we have no idea if that would pass.
Well, that's one of the things we would do, I presume, is the committee would look at all of the areas and see what we've got and then see where it needs improvement. But I haven't looked into it ahead of time.
Okay.
No point to do that. So, and the period of time to expect SLI expects you to get it done is 18 months, 2 years. There's no time limit, however. So that's it. The document has, if you go to the document online, you can get the URLs for the initiative and for the Northern Library and see what they've done. What URLs.
So there's documents that say what you have to have for heating and what you have to have for lighting.
No, they will provide guidance. When you see what you've got, you might ask them, well, what do you think, I suppose? What is the change in this? Am I supposed to get guidance from? They do not specify, as far as I can tell, things, exact things you have to do.
Could you explain that timeline again? So the 300 you pay upfront?
It appears, yes, and that's for the whole process of getting the certification, which involves their mentorship, your access to their
Okay.
resources. After that, it's just $50.
So you don't find out what you have to do until you pay 300?
Well, you won't find out what you have to do until you make an assessment yourself.
What they provide is sort of the steps of looking, this is what I'm
The things
hearing,
to look at. So
things to look at, so that a committee here would be the ones actually going around and
so for
looking
example,
at the lighting and looking.
yeah, so why do we have these three lights?
Yeah.
For the center?
And resources.
So, little things like that. The heating system 89 we talked about, I don't know what improvements we can make on it. There are some problems with it. And other things like we haven't looked at, so I don't know until we do looking, and they provide the information as to what things to look at.
Looking at these words right here, which is, the program provides library leaders with a tested structured path forward to increase your library's commitment to environmental stewardship, economic feasibility, and social equity. So it sounds like they're not set up to have you like have a list of things in a certain way, but to show that you're committed to making progress. And
Yeah, and
Being
they're just
sustainable.
12 sign.
my guess is that they wouldn't be like, you need this heating system, but they want us to prove that
Yeah, I think they want to see that we're doing what we can do.
Yeah. we're reviewing things, we're improving things.
So let me play devil's advocate here for a minute, because social equity is one of its goals. Is that gonna put a target on our back?
We're already a library. I mean, honestly, at this point, yeah.
You mean like a target on our back from federal government?
Yes,
Mhm.
anything that has diversity, equity is being included, shot, killed, murdered, stomped on, sued. You name it, they're doing it.
We don't have to bow to that.
PI hire.
We don't have to yield to that. We can still work toward those things. You'll go to jail for it.
I just bring that up, that
Yeah.
it is something to think about if we're kind of publicly going out on that limb, and I'm not saying that I don't want to, but we need to understand that this administration really is going after everybody who's doing anything in that avenue.
But there has been, for example, among the law firms, there's been already a deal of resistance and refusal. And I'm not saying that we should be refusing or anything, but social equity means everyone has good access to the library. And that's what we want to provide. We can provide that without saying social equity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
part of
already,
the-
it's already like what we do and is in our bylaw.
I just throw that out for
I totally understand.
consideration.
Because it's in their thing. So if they become a target, then it could, but at this point, like I said, we're already a library.
Right.
We're already in the crosshairs. And on top of that, like my personal feelings is that the more we lean into continuing that as a society, the harder it is to actually squelch it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't lock up everyone.
But certainly administration, whoever it's little people are looking for things, knows about SLI. It's public on their website. It's one of the things they declare. And so it's not that we would do suddenly, we go to Rockingham, we run a library when they got SLI, they can go after.
And the worst that happens if SLI disappears is that the certification annual thing isn't going to be a thing, but we'll still have any changes that we've decided make sense.
It's probably more inflammatory wording than social equity also, if we really wanted to draw attention to ourselves.
So I noticed this is listed as,
Go ahead. No, sorry.
oh, okay, I thought you. I noticed it's listed as a discussion item. Was there an action that would need to be taken because of the $300?
Well, I think if we're gonna decide to move forward, we need to enroll. So, and I can find out what we need to do that and report back.
I mean, I think there's one other, if I may,
Yeah.
I think there's one other like, path we have to be, aware of, which is that, the townspeople, 10, 11 years ago, invested like a lot of money into this building, including the HVAC system. And, the building is ADA compliant, and those are all good things that are about half paid for. So the bond has about 9 years, I think, left to be paid. And so I think, it would be great to do a sort of assessment of, the different pieces of this, while recognizing that, a lot of investments are even made in the building. So that might affect the degree to which we can meet some of the
We need to
criteria.
know
I think we need to know.
situation.
I think we need to know. I think it's very worth, and I would say that I would be, my preference would be that I think you should have an employee on the committee. My preference would be that Sky Peebles be the person on the committee. I think she'd be excellent. She also only works about 15, 20 hours a week, and she's already doing a lot, but I can have a conversation with her. I think she would be very enthusiastic about doing this. And I think she brings, I mean, I'd love to do it personally, but as we're talking, I'm thinking she would bring a tremendous amount of experience and insight and context, I think. And it would give her an opportunity to learn a lot about libraries and the current state of this library and everything like that too. Maybe she and I could both be involved in some way, but I certainly could, adjust her responsibilities to make space, for her to do this.
Yeah, I'm not imagining we're going to spend hours and hours a week at this.
No, but it would be, I think it's complicated. I think it would take a fair amount of, and she'd be starting kind of at zero. And so I think that she'll need more time just to kind of come up to speed with, I think she knows really much at all about the infrastructure of the building and stuff like that. But it would be good for her to know.
Just we keep it not just a discussion, but maybe on our next agenda so that then we can vote on it if we, as
So the vote would be for the committee and place.
well, the vote would be to pay the 300 and maybe create a committee or whatever looks like it's the appropriate plan.
Or the 350 if it's
Yeah.
300 for the certification and 50 for a year's worth of membership.
We have approved the 50. Last month or last meeting. Yeah, and I think the only thing I want to add is sort of reiterating kind of what you said, Ian, that, anytime, and this just comes from my background in energy planning, that, when you are assessing and doing assessments of buildings, you have to think in incremental steps, right? It's not saying, oh my gosh, we have to do all these changes right now. It's saying, here's the changes we would like to see, and you're starting to build a timeline. Because, and especially with heating systems and such, like, you want to know ahead of time that eventually you might be changing it. Because the worst thing is when it goes out and then you're in a panic and have to change it, you don't have time to think about what might be the best
Well,
alternative.
and the technology keeps changing and the price of, the solar panels changes and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Access to materials change.
And I think I mentioned last time, we're in a contract with the Rockingham Solar Novus Rockingham or whatever it's called for about 10 more years. And so, which is very expensive. I mean, that's a major part of our electricity bills, which is the only real utility bill other than sewer and water that we have here. And it's significant. And so, we're bound to that. It doesn't, what it powers is, the infrastructure it's electrifying could change, but we're committed to that structure. And I'm not convinced that that was financially, it's at looking back and where we are now.
But something like this committee, right,
There's not much flexibility, I guess.
is they're documenting things
Yeah.
like that. And so that, again, it gets built into okay, we need to be paying attention to it at this point in time. There's other things that could come up before that, right? And it's just making sure that you're aware of the whole energy landscape of a building.
Yeah, and I could see like us being in a 10-year window of like a new heating system, right? And so now's the time we would start that process. So I think it's a fantastic thing. I think we should go for it in the whole bid. I don't think at the 300, I think I said last time, the Friends will gladly align the library with this mission. I think that's all to the better. I'm just mindful of the fact that the generosity of the townspeople for this enterprise is, to keep in mind along the way.
So we'll put it on the agenda for official motion and our next meeting. And, just one other discussion point, we do have an energy committee within the town. And so maybe consider, as we're considering how to open up the committee to people, maybe inviting somebody from that committee. Because there are already people
Yeah,
who are
that's a good
very
idea.
interested
Yeah.
in. All right, anything more about the Sustainable Libraries Program? All right, other business. Ian's like, "Oh, anybody? All right, hearing none. Just review action items and agenda items for next meeting. We have the Sustainable Libraries.
We vote on the bylaw.
Yeah, vote number 2 on the bylaws. Yeah.
I would keep the update on the federal funding stuff.
That should be like a regular thing for the time being. I imagine, yeah.
Be good.
Yeah.
Let the meeting.
Well, and just so y'all know, if anything, like I like this, it's really been helpful to follow the state's like methodical lead in this because I appreciate not getting caught up in when it doesn't matter, it's just panic for the sake of panic. And so, but if anything comes up that it actually seems like it'd be good for you folks to know quickly, I'll make sure to let you know quickly that's the case. But hopefully that won't happen.
Any other items for that pattern? All right, you can always reach out to me or Ian if you think of something between now and the next meeting. So hearing nothing else, we will adjourn and it is 7:20.
Do you need to figure out what our next meeting is?
So the next meeting,
July something.
we technically have a meeting date.
Yeah, definitely.
It's Thursday. I mean, I've lost track of them.
So it's the
Yeah,
day.
not on this week.
June.
All my board meetings.
So it would be July, and it looks like it's July 17th.
I have
At 6:30.
15th, right?
15th is a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, it's what I said.
Somebody's gonna be.
I have it on
I
my.
put it in manually, it wasn't a reoccurring.
So it's the 17th?
It is, so the third Thursday would be July 17th at 6:30 PM.
Yeah, it's available. And far enough away, I have no clue what I'm doing.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all.